Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. All right, first question. How long can you do the exact same weight and still gain muscle? Example, 3x10 seated curls for 2 weeks. Does the weight or rep range have to increase every session for muscle growth to occur? Good question. Very context dependent. Are we talking about noobs or are we talking about advanced lifters or elite lifters? Keeping in mind, very advanced and elite lifters, we are gaining muscle so slowly that this probably doesn't even matter in that context, in the sense that you're talking about secondary exercises. Okay, secondary exercises. I would say on primary exercises, it's about 3 weeks. It's about 3 weeks. But you talked about 3x10 on, say, a seated curl. So I don't know whether you meant bicep or hamstring curl. Probably doesn't matter either. I'm going to say in this case, it's not as important. And here's why. Secondary exercises are used to create fatigue. Your primary exercises are your primary stimulus. So let's say you've been periodizing or running 5-3-1 or conjugate or whatever for your deadlifts, right? And your deadlift, and say maybe deadlifts in good mornings or something. I don't know. But we could just say straight deadlifts. And you come behind it to get a secondary training stimulus with a seated hamstring curl. Progressive overload is about the total work and muscle fiber stimulation done per session. So if the primary exercise is not increasing at all, you're probably not growing. Okay, that is your benchmark. That's your benchmark for adaptation. Are you getting stronger on the primary stuff? In this case, the deadlift. And I'm not saying it has to be the deadlift, by the way. I'm just using that as an example. Well, then you know you're not growing and you need to either address programming, sleep, fatigue, things like that. A secondary exercise, if it's still fatiguing and challenging and you're doing the same amount of reps in reserve, even with the same weight, long term, it doesn't matter as much, and here's why. Because you have created more workload on the primary exercise. If the deadlift is increasing, let's say in that 3-week period of time you've gained 1 rep, or you put 2.5 pounds on any of the deadlift work, whether it's a singles, work set, 5s, 10s, whatever. You've had a slight increase. You've already increased the total tension and fatigue created on the hamstrings. You see where we're going with this? They have already been fatigued heavily going into those curls. So if those hamstring curls stay constant, and we intentionally do them right behind it to make sure we're in a fatigued state, and it's actually a good idea for smaller movements like that to do them in a fatigued state already, so that we use less weight, so that we don't get overuse and tendon issues from trying to do smaller single joint exercises. This is where they mess us up. I'm going to say in that context, it probably is largely irrelevant. Now, if we're talking about the big movements, let's cut out the example you gave, then they better see an increase every 3rd week in some way. And if they're not, maybe you're just not stimulating enough growth, right? You've got to reassess what's going on in your programming. Maybe you're cutting. Maybe you're trying to recomp. Maybe you're focusing on another area. In which case that movement may not budge. And you accept that. But if you're trying to progress on it and you're not, and there's no change, well, it's not just about adding weight to the bar anymore either. It's about what's your total workload, what's your total fatigue management look like. Is there a nutritional issue that's causing recovery? Is it a sleep issue that's causing recovery? You need to get down to the source of it. It's not just the training. It may not be just the training. It goes deeper than that. All right, next question. I am currently on a cut, but I twisted my ankle today. Do you recommend I go back to maintenance calories while I recover? Also, what training advice would you give, i.e., can I still do some light floor press, lat pull down, seated exercise? Don't put strain on my feet. I've got a home gym and work from home, so don't need to travel. All right. Is there some imperative reason you have to keep cutting? And I'm going to go on a limb here and say powerlifting meet is not going to count here because you've now been injured. Your meet prep has been compromised anyways. Are you prepping for a bodybuilding show or a photo shoot that is your entire world? In that case, you can continue cutting, understand that you're going to lose muscle and your injury is going to heal slower. But if that event is the entire reason that you breathe and sleep and live your life, that is the single most important thing in your life, then you suck that up. I wouldn't recommend it, but that's what you have to do. Now, were you cutting just because you want to lose some body fat? You've been injured. You need to bulk. What in the hell do you mean by maintenance? How do you build tissue? How do you rebuild tissue? How do you repair tissue in the body? A calorie surplus. Now, you're probably going to go, but I've been cutting. I don't want to gain fat. Well, you should have thought of that before you subjected yourself to an injury. You didn't twist your ankle in a vacuum. You twisted your ankle doing something you shouldn't have been doing. Or you twisted your ankle because you were weak and fatigued from cutting too quickly, which increases injury risk. Okay? You need to quit cutting. It's time to put some weight back on. And here's what's going to happen. If you continue to stay in a deficit, you will heal slower. Maintenance, you'll heal faster. If you go into a very small calorie surplus, that injury, because it's connective tissue related, will heal even faster. Take your protein up, take your calories up to just above maintenance. You don't have to gain much weight. Keep that in mind. You're not going to gain much body fat if you're still working out and you go into a very tiny surplus. Let's say you gain 2 pounds over the course of letting this ankle heal for a couple of weeks. Right? It's fine. Your lower body probably needs to rest. You've probably, again, overextended yourself while cutting. You might be one of those people who does a bunch of cardio. You've been out doing a bunch of jogging or something while you're cutting. Well, you just pay the price. You just realize why that doesn't work. Injury risk go up, high impact stuff, bad in a calorie deficit. What do you mean light floor press, light pull downs? You get in and train your ass off. What do you mean light? Your ankle is twisted. Why don't you train your upper body harder than you've ever trained it before? Because now your lower body isn't contributing to your fatigue at all. You're going to need to go into a little bit of a calorie surplus to speed up the healing process. Why don't you train your upper body with everything that you have? Why don't you make some gains in that week while you're letting your lower body heal? That's what I would do. That's what I would recommend. There's your solution. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.